Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video we're going to be doing Theon, A Clash of Kings 2. Now, what I will say with this chapter, as much as I really like Theon's first chapter, his second chapter, in my opinion, is, I would say, a bit more questionable. A lot of this chapter spends his time with Asha, or introducing us and Theon to the character of Asha. Unfortunately, this is basically done through Theon trying to have sex with his sister. Nothing new to A Song of Ice and Fire, I will say, but all the same, it doesn't read for the most comfortable reading, especially when you actually know what's going on in a reread. But I will say I do like parts of this chapter a lot, like the revealing of the true, Greyjoy plan, what Balon plans to do in the north, all of that stuff. This is another long chapter. George really likes to sandwich all his big chapters back to back to back, as this one will probably be over an hour, or at least around that area as well, so strap in and get ready for some fun Theon and Asha sibling fun time. But that'll get us into page 284. Theon admires his new boat, to which he compares to a woman. It was as beautiful as his first, comparing it to the first time that he lost his virginity. This is the first time he's had his own real ship to himself. This will be the ship that he takes to war against the North. It really shows that Theon is not really contemplating, going with Robb or going with. He is firmly gonna do the Greyjoy work, whether that's his own ideas or his father's. But at this, a woman speaks to him from behind, noting his appreciative expression and calling him a lordling. We know this to be Asha, but Theon doesn't know this. Remember, Theon hasn't seen his sister in a number of years since they were children. She's very much changed from being a child to a young woman. He turns to look at her, immediately recognizing her as Ironborn by her lean body, long legs, wind-chafed skin, and short black hair. Asha looks the part of someone that's Ironborn, and it's really fascinating that he makes that claim, because of the two of them, everybody looks at Asha as being an Ironborn, someone, a true person that they can follow as a captain, whereas Theon is not that. Theon has not proven anything to anyone. He's very much an outsider to them, trying to be Ironborn. She carries a dirk at her belt, and her movements suggest familiarity with life aboard a ship. This is all fascinating because up until this point of the series, we haven't seen really many women at all that actually even carry swords at all. Arya has shown a lot of interest in it. She was a character that started that journey in book 1. She's continuing it here with book 2. And it's really interesting to me that you have two of our main women characters that are more traditionally doing more manly things in this world, of like using weapons and things like that, or that's the stereotype of this world anyway. And they're both introduced in like the span of a couple chapters. I find that really fascinating, especially because these two characters will become more prevalent as the series goes on. Theon notes that her nose is sharp and large for her face, but her smile compensates for it. Asha is always kind of described as being, yes, pretty, but never like, oh, like she's an Ariane, where Ariane is somebody that's like, yeah, she's basically a celebrity. Like people really fall under her spell. Asha is like, yeah, she's a, definitely attractive, but she's not the most attractive or anything. She's not somebody that you would pick out of a group of people, is kind of the vibe I get for Asha. Theon estimates her to be a few years older than him, possibly around 25, but he does find her attractive. Well, Theon finds almost any woman that moves to be attractive at this point, but he responds to her comment by calling the woman he was admiring a sweet sight, but not as sweet as her. Again, it's the classic Theon flirtation that reminds me of a. Again, I said this a lot in Theon's first chapter. It reminds me of like a college frat guy. That's what Theon really reminds me in this book, and I just find it hilarious to be in his head because, given what we know what's happening, it makes it all the worse. She grins and teases him about having a honeyed tongue, something that definitely Theon has. He boldly invites her to test it, saying, "Test it and see." She questions whether his interest is due to a long time at sea or of lack of women where he came from. Asha is really trying to figure out who Theon is as a person, right? She hasn't seen her brother in how many years, and she's heard probably rumors about him based on what's going on in the Iron Islands and Pike right now, but she wants to see it for herself. And what better way to do that is to play somebody that Theon would A, find desirable, and two, that he doesn't really know. And so this is really important because Asha's trying to understand, okay, is Theon having just manly urges, or is he just horny all the time? Like, is that what's going on here? Theon responds that there were women, but none like her. The classic, oh, you're not like the rest line. I swear George R. R. Martin must have gone to a college campus or some sort of school and literally looked up the definition of a frat guy. That's all I've got to say. It's just too on the nose. She challenges him, asking how he would know what she was like. Well, of course, he just met her, but obviously Theon's trying to get in her pants, so, you know. She references Ironborn women, stating that salt and sea changed them, giving them a man's appetite. Very obviously, Asha is not like normal women, right? She is somebody that wants to be the captain of a ship and wants to fight in battles. It's not traditional for normal women, and especially when you think about Theon, doesn't have much experience with that at all. Theon does not really recognize Asha. Despite her knowledge of Ironborn culture and confidence in their exchange, which is something that's going to be quite weird for Theon. Even in the Ironborn culture, women don't traditionally fight, but Asha is kind of this outlier. So who is she? Why hasn't Theon heard about her? She would be somebody that you think would eventually be brought up. So that gets us into page 285 as Theon tries to figure that out and continues to try and get in her pants. Theon continues his flirtation, making a crude remark about his attraction to Asha. She steps close, pressing her hand against his breeches, and confirms that he is not lying about being attracted to her and things like that. Asha doesn't make the situation better. I will say, she does not help it. And honestly, if you're Theon, I want you to think about this for a second. Yes, you are hitting on this woman that you do not know who she is. You have no idea. But the odds that this is your sister, and then your sister also is playing along and also grabbing your genitals. The Greyjoys are just fucked up. That's all I gotta say. Even though I love Asha as a character, this is just messed up. She teasingly asks how much it hurts, and he responds fiercely. She steps back and reveals that she is married and newly pregnant. Man, this is like a bad version of Romeo and Juliet. Oh man, the opening of this chapter just cracks me up. It's because this chapter is so awkward to start. You gotta find some comedy in it. Theon dismisses her concerns, saying that at least he wouldn't risk giving her a bastard. He doesn't care. He does not care anything about Asha. He just wants to get in her pants. She remarks that her husband wouldn't thank him, to which Theon responds that she might, because Theon's just so good in bed, guys. He's just so good. She downplays his arrogance, stating that she has been with lords before, and they are the same as any other man. Men have the same parts. I mean, some men are probably more experienced, they're better at it, but that's all I got to say on that part of it. Theon attempts to impress her by claiming that sleeping with him would be different since he is a prince. Ah, there it is. Play the rich card. Gotta love Theon. He suggests that she could one day boast about having been with a king. This is going to be a point of contention if you're Asha. Asha's going to be thinking, Theon thinks he's going to be a king one day. Yes, Theon is the next in line in terms of the normal laws of succession, and that's what Theon's working on. That's what Theon is working with, something we talked about in the last chapter, but the Ironborn are different. They respect, fighting ability and devoutness to their culture, and Theon's an outsider. He's striding into Pike and the Ironborn like he's above them all. He hasn't earned any of that, in their eyes anyway. She mocks him, pointing out that their interaction is more about lust than it is love, and she's completely correct. Theon does not care about her at all. He just wants to get in her pants. Theon, playing along, sarcastically offers to name his ship after her, sing to her, and keep her in a tower with jewels like a princess. What does that sound like? Theon wants to sing to her. He wants to keep her in a tower and display her like a princess. It sounds a lot like what was happening at the Tower of Joy, if you believe Rhaegar and Lyanna is the truth. Rhaegar was known for his singing, and he did this exact thing. It's a little weird that it seems like almost on the nose for the Rhaegar and Lyanna theory that we are given. She only responds to the part about the ship, trying to avoid talking about love and being whisked away by her brother. I can't really blame her, although that she just touched his cock and squeezed it, which is kind of weird. But this whole chapter is weird, so we just got to get through it, guys. We just got to get through it. She only responds to the part about the ship. Asha claims that she built the ship, but Theon dismisses this right away. He knows that it was built by Sigrun, his father's shipwright. She introduces herself as Esgrid, the daughter the daughter of Ambrose and wife of Sigrun. But this is what's so interesting, right? Is this is somebody that Theon knows, but even he can't see through this lie that Asha definitely is not this person's wife. And if Theon knew anything about the Ironborn culture and the people that he was actually trying to be the king of, he would know that. And so that's what Asha's kind of trying to show here, that Theon is prancing around trying to be a princeling, and he doesn't know any of the people. He doesn't know the Ironborn. Theon is surprised by this, realizing he had never heard of Ambrose's daughter or Sigrun's wife. He flirts again, saying she is wasted on Sigrun. She counters by saying that Sigrun thinks the ship is wasted on Theon. This is a very interesting remark. This tells you everything you need to know about how the Ironborn view Theon. Theon has not earned the right to captain a ship, so why should Sigrun have to build one for him? He's fought no battles, at sea. He's just some kid that came from the Starks. Theon bristles at the insult and asserts his identity as Prince Theon of House Greyjoy. She knowingly acknowledges who he is and asks how much he truly loves his new ship, as Sigrun would want to know. Theon admires the longship, describing its sleek black hull, tall mast, 50 oars, an iron ram shaped like an arrowhead. He acknowledges that Sigrun did well in building it and asks if it is fast as it looks. The one thing you can say about the Greyjoys is they make incredible ships. This ship just sounds fantastic compared to some of the other ships we might see in Westeros. Think about ships that we see other characters take later on in the series. This is a prime naval ship. And wherever Theon's, he's going to be sent, his mission's not all that grand. I will say they do give him a pretty solid ship. But that gets us to page 286. Asha remarks that the ship is fast, but only for a skilled master. It's the whole idea of if you give someone something really nice, say for instance, I got a new camera for this setup. If you're somebody that doesn't know how to use a camera, you don't know how to focus a good camera, if you don't know how to adjust brightness and things like that, well, the camera's going to look bad. It doesn't matter if it's a good camera or not. That's something that even I figured out when I was getting into YouTube is you can have all the supplies and tools of, wanting to make content, but if you don't know how to do those things, it's going to look bad. Same idea here. You can get a great ship, but if you have a bad crew, if you're not a good leader, if you don't know how to even operate a ship, it doesn't matter. The ship is not going to function the way it could be if you had somebody like maybe Asha or Victarion operating as captain of the ship. Theon himself admits it had been years since he sailed, and he has never captained a ship, but asserts that he is a Greyjoy and he has the sea in his blood. But what did Theon just admit to Asha? Right? He's not Ironborn at all. He has no experience whatsoever at captaining a ship, something Asha's been doing for a very long time. He has really no experience sailing at all. It's everything you need to know that Theon is not the right person for the Ironborn, and he's going to be rejected by them, which we will see really come to a front by the end of the chapter. She warns that his blood will end up in the sea if he sails the way he talks. And Theon responds flirtatiously once again, stating that he would never mistreat such a fair maiden. She laughs and corrects him, calling the ship a sea bitch, which is interesting because you think about Asha herself. Asha doesn't want to be called a maiden. She's not that whatsoever. She wants to be a warrior and a pirate and all these things, and so the name kind of reflects who Asha wants to be or who she is as a whole. Theon decides then to name the ship after her, which amuses Asha. Of course it's going to amuse you. Theon finally gets his first ship and he names it after his sister, who he's currently hitting on. It's hilarious. She reminds them that he promised to name it after her, and Theon playfully insists that he did, taking her hand and continuing his flirtation. He claims that in the Greenlands it is believed that sleeping with a pregnant woman brings good fortune. This is like the idea of blue balls. Like, you're just saying shit to get in her pants at this point. Like, Theon is just like, I want to drill this into your head that even though we sympathize for Theon by the time we get to book 5, boy, is he an arrogant frat boy at this point of the story. But Asha questions this. Why is Theon stating stuff from the Greenlands? Again, he's not really Ironborn. He's more a Stark than he is a Greyjoy. She questions what people from the Greenlands would know about ships or women and accuses him of making it up. He jokingly asks if she will still love him if he confesses, and she replies that she never loved him in the first place. Good on you, Asha. You don't fall in love with your brother. That's probably a good motto. Theon admits that it was a lie, but continues trying to win her over. He invites her aboard his ship, suggesting that they bless it in their own way rather than waiting for his uncle Aeron's religious ceremony. She warns that the Drowned God might not approve. Yeah, I don't think he would approve of incest and the Greyjoy kids messing around on their ship. Not a good idea. Theon dismisses their concerns, saying he would drown the god again if necessary. This is a big revealing point. Theon doesn't care about the gods either. So not only does he know nothing really of the Ironborn or their culture, he also doesn't care about their gods either. So, again, all the warning signs are here that Theon should not be the king of the Iron Islands or be so arrogant as he is about being a prince. He reminds her that he's going off to war soon and asks if she would let him go into battle, longing for her. She coldly replies that she would do so gladly. Theon calls her cruel and jokes that his distraction might cause him to wreck the ship, placing the blame on her. She brushes her hand against his breeches once again. The counter right now is Asha has now touched Theon's cock twice and teases him by tracing a finger over his arousal. Theon suddenly invites her back to Pike, wondering how his father, Balon Greyjoy, would react, but deciding he does not care. If Balon could see his kids right now, Asha's fingers on Theon's cock, I don't know what Balon would do. I think Balon would probably keel over and have a heart attack, but actually that might be a good thing for Westeros, so maybe we should let him see this. I think this actually might be a good idea. But Theon doesn't particularly care what his father has to think. His father has basically already shunned Theon, has treated him like trash, so who cares at this point? But Asha responds, asking what she would do in Pike, keeping her hand where it is. Theon mentions that his father will be feasting his captains that night, but admits that these feasts have been happening regularly while they wait for the last arrival. Again, this is just okay, we're getting everybody together, we're getting the band back together, we're gonna go do the Greyjoy Rebellion Part 2, but not everybody's here yet, so Balon's gotta entertain them, keep them occupied until his full force is ready. But that gets us into page 287. Asha teases Theon again, asking if he would make her his captain for the night, and Theon plays along, saying he might if she could steer him safely into port. She boasts about her skills with ropes and knots, then mischievously unlaces his breeches with one hand before stepping away. Well, Asha, you gotta chill out. You gotta chill out, Asha. I know Theon has a lot to blame for this, but I might have to take a little bit of Theon's side here later on in this chapter. She repeats that she is married and pregnant, leaving Theon flustered as he laces himself back up. He invites her to Pike, claiming he might lose his way without her, and that all the islands would suffer for it. She points out that she has no horse, and Theon offers her his squire's mount. She refuses to leave the squire stranded and suggested sharing his horse instead. You know what this reminds me of? You know in Transformers 1, I forget the character's name. Oh, it's Sam. Sam, and I think it was Michaela in Transformers 1, where Sam's like, hey, the seatbelt's broken. Maybe you should, sit over here. Exact situation that just happened, except the roles are reversed. Like, Asha, I mean, as much as you want to say Theon is the guy that's seducing you, and that's kind of weird and all that stuff, which it is, but it's not like Asha also isn't playing along, and she knows that Theon is Theon, and she's making it worse. So I'm just saying, not a good look. They flirt about who would sit in front or behind, with Asha confidently declaring she likes to be on top. Again, it just reflects the normal manly standard is the man is on top, and that's what Asha wants to be. It's the same idea of like Cersei and a lot of her sexual conquests that she tries to go on in A Feast for Crows. Same idea here with Asha, just reflecting her as a person and her personality. Theon increasingly captivated by Asha, probably because she's just so different, unique, and fiery. He really likes her at this point, saying Pike needs her presence to make its halls blaze. She acknowledges his charm, calling him honey-tongued once again. Asha finally agrees to accompany him, dramatically telling him to take her to see Pike's towers. Theon leads her to the inn where he left his horse, taking her arm as they walk. He admires her confident, swaying stride, imagining she would be just as bold in bed. Oh boy, the looks people must be giving Theon and Asha right now. Could you imagine you're like, you're working, maybe you're cutting some wood or you're an innkeep, and you see Asha and Theon getting cozy. This is quite literally the son and daughter, the last children of your lord/king. Lord's port is crowded with longship crews and warriors preparing for war. As they pass, oarsmen and townsfolk grow quiet and nod respectfully to Theon. Theon thinks that they're doing it to him. They are obviously nodding towards Asha. Asha has the respect of these people and not Theon. They don't even really know Theon until recently. It's very interesting, right? All of the foreshadowing is there for who Asha really is, but it goes completely over Theon's head. And again, you can't blame Theon, but he should question, why are these people treating me with respect now? Why is it all of a sudden now? And the suspicious nature of Asha just in general, there's a lot here that Theon, it kind of goes over his head because of his arrogance. And he's also not the brightest guy of the bunch. He's happy he's finally getting his recognition that he deserves, but at this, he notices Lord Goodbrother's fleet of 40 longships had arrived the night before, filling Lord's port with his men, who are identified by their striped goat's hair sashes. Theon hears that Lord Goodbrother's young warriors are keeping busy with the local whores, whom he dismisses as unworthy of his attention. He finds Asha far more appealing, her marriage and pregnancy only adding to his fascination. Boy, Theon is a little... This is him having parent issues, that's all I'm going to say. As they walk toward the stable, Asha asks if Theon has started selecting his crew. She greets a seafarer named Bluetooth, a large man wearing a bearskin vest and a raven-winged helmet. That sounds sick. That guy is dripped out as hell. But I will say, another warning sign should be, okay, Asha knows all these people, and they seem to give her a lot of respect. Why is that? They joke about Bluetooths, not Bluetooth, Bluetooths. I know, it's very confusing. Wife being pregnant with twins, with Bluetooth boasting about his efforts. Theon considers recruiting Bluetooth for his ship, but Asha warns that he would take offense as he already commands his own vessel. Once again, Asha knows the people. She knows what men would be great for going on a war or a voyage. Theon knows nobody. Theon is grasping at straws. That's another thing that Asha is going to consider about Theon. Theon admits that he had been away too long to recognize most men and mentions that his uncle Victarion lent him a steersman. Asha names Rymulf Stormdrunk and notes that he is skilled but unreliable when drunk. She calls out to 3 more men, Uller, Carl, and Skyte's brother, asking about Skyte. The older man with a white-streaked beard replies that the drowned god took Skyte. A younger man clarifies that Skyte died from excessive drinking, his belly bursting from too much wine. They all recite the traditional Ironborn phrase, "What's dead may never die," and Theon mutters along as well. A man dying from overconsumption. I don't know if he should get the phrase, but you know what? Fair enough. Theon remarks that Asha seems well known, and she claims that every man respects the shipwright's wife unless he wants his ship to sink. It is definitely a good explanation by Asha on the spot, showing her cleverness. But again, why are so many people like cozy with this character of Eskred that Asha is pretending to be? Theon, you gotta put the things together a little bit more. I mean, I know it is very, very, very low chance that Theon runs into a sister, finds her attractive, and then she also plays this role that is really weird. So, I don't blame Theon all that much, but I feel like there's a lot of warning signs that maybe he should have picked up on. She suggests that the 3 men they spoke to would make good oarsmen, but Theon, however, wants fighters who would be loyal to him, rather than to his father or his uncles. Theon wants men that will listen to him, that will fight for him. The problem is, nobody is going to do that. Nobody cares about Theon. Nobody respects Theon. So why would Theon get his own private army that's just loyal to him? Theon is playing the dutiful prince right now, but he's kind of considering his options. What is best for Theon? Not necessarily what is best for the Ironborn. Asha advises that strength alone isn't enough. A ship's oarsmen must row in unison for maximum speed. And Theon acknowledges her wisdom and asks if she would help him select his crew, pretending to value her counsel. He's manipulating her. He's trying to make her feel like she's smart, because women, in his experience, like to be told that they're smart and feel included. that he doesn't actually care about her advice. Asha playfully considers helping, depending on how kindly he treats her, as Theon assures her that he would treat her well, getting us into page 289. As they near the Mirham, a merchant cog, Theon quickens his pace. The ship sits high in the water, empty since Lord Balon has forbidden any merchant vessel from departing to prevent news of their gathering forces from reaching the mainland. It's the same thing that Stannis Baratheon is doing. It's very smart by Balon. Don't let them know that you're gathering men, and two, what you're going to do. Those rumors could get out to people like the Lannisters or the Starks, and then, okay, now your invasion's completely different. The captain's daughter calls out to Theon from the forecastle. She has been confined to the ship by her father, but often watches longingly from the deck. This is the woman that Theon was having sex with in the first chapter that he has, and she has a really bad, she's had a really bad way of things. She gets caught up in Theon's manipulation and using her, and Theon does not care about her one bit. Asha notices this, though, and teasingly asks whether the girl had pleased him. Again, it just shows Theon is a horny bastard all the time. Theon, being direct, admits that she did for a time, but now she wishes to be his salt wife. Asha mocks the girl, calling her too soft and bland, a judgment Theon finds surprisingly accurate. Very harsh words. Unfortunately, this girl, like so many girls in Westeros, has been used and abused. That's all I gotta say. They enter the crowded inn where Theon searches for his squire, Wex. As Theon spots Wex dicing near the hearth and winning, judging by the pile of coins. Annoyed, Theon pulls him away from the game by his ear. Wex, a mute but clever boy, gathers his winnings and follows without protest. Theon had taken Wex as his squire as a part of a deal to obtain his horse from Lord Boltley, Wex's baseborn, the son of Boltley's half-brother. When Wex sees Asha, he looks shocked, as if he's never seen a woman before. Now, this is what I think is hilarious. Theon calls Wex kind of slow, but also clever in this chapter. But yet, Wex knows exactly who Asha is. And Theon dismisses Wex so much that even Theon doesn't pick up on Wex knowing something is wrong here. Theon instructs Wex to saddle the horses, stating that Asha will ride with him to Pike. Asha is intrigued by Theon's horse, a large and fierce animal that stands out amongst the usual small, rugged ponies of the Iron Islands. One of the big reasons the Iron Islands don't do well on land, they don't have good horses. If Robb's, for instance, his mounted horse was to go against whatever the Greyjoys have, it would be a slaughter. It would be like the Dothraki going against unmounted men. So that's one thing that the Greyjoys just don't have going for them. It's why they're good at naval combat, but not so good on land. They don't have good military capabilities with horses. And Theon is smart to understand having big horses, having strong horses is very important in a war, right? But he also doesn't understand that in this war, they're not going to be doing a lot of land fighting. It's going to be a lot more of sea fighting. That's what the Greyjoys want to do. Asha asks where he got the horse, amused yet impressed. Theon explains that Lord Boltley had bought it from Lannisport, but found it too difficult to handle, so he gladly sold it. That's another part of it, right? Theon grew up, riding horses and being taught and instructed how to ride war horses. The Greyjoys, the Iron Islands, have no need for horses for the most part. They have no way of actually being able to learn about this stuff at all. Unlike the mainland, the Ironborn are not known for their horsemanship. The rocky, barren landscape make it unsuitable for breeding fine horses, and most islanders are more comfortable on the ships than in the saddle, is what Theon thinks, which is, again, what I talked about, a reason they're not good in land combat. Lords ride small garrons or Harlaw ponies. Ox carts are more common than proper carriages, and the poorest small folk must pull their own plows through the stony soil. This right here really paints the image of the poorness of the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands is not a rich island nation. It's one reason why, in a lot of ways, I compare the Iron Islands to a lot of what Japan was trying to accomplish in World War II, because the Iron Islands by themselves really are not a sustainable nation of trying to gain wealth, right? Without actually trading with others and things like that or raiding, they just cannot function as a society. It's one of the reasons I think Asha will eventually become the new ruler of the Iron Islands, because she understands that. It's a lot of these other people that just don't get that. They as a society are falling behind a lot of the other societies because of them just being a culture that's stuck in the past. We then move into page 290. Theon, having spent 10 years in Winterfell, valued the strong warhorse and refuses to ride in a battle without one. Lord Boltley's loss is his gain. That's another thing, right? This horse is actually quite valuable, and it seems like almost it's given away to Theon. Theon acquired a black tempered stallion, larger than a courser, but not quite as massive as a destrier, perfect for his size. Theon's not like a big man. He's not kind of like Victarion, for instance, who's much more big in size. Theon is a bit more, I would say, normal sized. The horse has fire in its eyes, and initially even tried to bite Theon's face when they first met, which is actually a good thing for a horse, especially for a war horse. You think about Theon, you think about Tyrion in Book 1, Tyrion's horse actually saves his life. War horses are taught to do things like this. Asha asked the horse's name, and Theon revealed it as Smiler. Again, George's really great thing where he a lot of times reflects the horse onto the person. And Theon likes to smile a lot. He has a honeyed tongue. He's somebody that's very arrogant. That name fits Theon so well. He explains that a man once told him he smiled at the wrong things, to which she asks if that is true. Theon replies that he does by the standards of those who never smile at all, thinking of his father and Uncle Aeron. As they ride, Theon pulls Asha up in front of him, wrapping his arms around her. He enjoys her scent, salt, sweat, and woman. It just gets weird. It just gets weird, guys. It just gets really, really weird, especially on this return journey. The return journey to Pike promises to be more interesting than the ride to Lordsport. Beyond Lordsport, Theon begins to grope at Asha's breast, but she swiftly removes his hand and warns him to hold the reins unless he wants to be thrown and kicked to death. This is Asha really just wanting her brother to not feel up on her, but maybe she shouldn't be leading him on that way. Theon is amused and obeys for a short time anyway, as he engages in small talk about the dreary weather, gray, overcast, and rainy, and he boasts about his kills at the Whispering Wood. He's a very arrogant type of guy, gloating about the people he's killed, which a lot of men do in this world anyway, but just wanted to point that out. When he recounts how close he came to fighting Jaime Lannister, he slides his hand back up to her breast. Again, Theon is thinking that, these great deeds are what's going to get him in Asha's pants, and doing all this stuff talking about himself and how great he is. It's not going to go all that well, given this is A, his sister, and 2, if Theon had gone against Jaime would have absolutely wrecked Theon. Asha warns him again, "You don't want to do that, my Lord Prince." Theon insists that he does and gives her a squeeze. Boy, this is not good. She then points out that his squire, Wex, is watching. Wex is having a grand old time watching Theon make an absolute fool of himself. Theon shrugs it off, confident Wex will never speak of it. And this time, Asha grips Theon's hand tightly, preventing further wandering. Theon enjoys the strength in her hands and comments, "I like a woman with a good, tight grip." And that gets us into page 291. Asha snorts at Theon's previous comment, teasing that she wouldn't have guessed his preference for strong women based on the waterfront wench. Theon defends himself, claiming she was simply the only woman available on the ship. And Asha shifts the conversation, trying to find out a bit more about Theon and his beliefs, asking about Lord Balon and whether he will welcome her kindly to Pike. Theon scoffs, saying his Lord Father barely welcomed him, his own son and heir. Asha then gets to the real meat of the issue, something she's particularly interested in, as Theon believes that he's the heir, but Asha challenges this, pointing out that he has uncles, sisters, and supposedly there's no true guarantee of inheritance. Theon dismisses his uncles, right? Aeron is a religious person now. Victarion is just this loyal brute. He will follow Theon. And Euron, who there is some question marks about, but he has been in exile and could likely be dead. But he shifts the topic to his sister, as he mocks her for wearing male hauberks and leather small clothes like a man. Ironic, Theon, the only woman you've run into is the one that's not dressing like a woman. Like, come on, Theon. And if you're Asha, you're just sitting here like, man, this guy really is an idiot. It's like, he really is dumb. But he also recalls her as ugly, pimply, and flat-chested, convinced that he will marry her off for an alliance after the war. Again, Theon is treating Asha as an object. It just shows who Theon is as a person, but it also shows that puberty can change people, Theon. You do not look the same as when you were younger either. So, That's all I gotta say on that issue. Asha counters, noting that he may be able to marry off Asha, but not his uncles. This strikes a nerve with Theon. Theon knows that ambitious Ironborn uncles have often usurped weak nephews and killed them. So this is interesting, right? It just reinforces the idea that the Ironborn believe in strength and whoever can claim the throne. Theon is not those things right now. Theon is determined to not to be weak and insists that his uncles are of no threat. He firstly dismisses Aeron, who, again, he's too obsessed with religion, but he makes a mistake when talking to Asha, because he says the word his god in terms of Aeron's god, but not Theon's. And Asha points that out. Theon tries to correct himself, but the damage has been done. But next he addresses Victarion, who is Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet. Asha points out that Victarion is feared and sung about in alehouses, and Theon acknowledges his strength and loyalty, recalling how he burned the Lannister fleet in Lannisport, alongside of Euron Greyjoy. Again, like I mentioned, Theon views Victarion as a tool, not someone that doesn't have, the smarts to take the throne or that would go against Theon. He describes Victarion as strong but dull, who will serve loyally but never scheme. Now, I don't know if I'd say Victarion is dull. I think he's a very fun POV to read, but I think Theon does have a pretty accurate idea here. Like, if you even think about the idea of he will serve loyally, he was serving Euron pretty loyally until now he's gotten the opportunity to break away from that. But think about that. All the things Euron has done to Victarion, and Victarion was still willing to at least play along with Euron for a while. Theon grows more uneasy when Asha mentions Euron's crow's eye. Again, it already we're building to the allure of Euron. We know that he was doing things in the background of Storm of Swords in terms of probably killing Balon, or at least having somebody else kill Balon. But he's something we won't even see until Feast for Crows, but I think it's really interesting the way that George has already kind of set that up here. The one true threat to the Ironborn, to Theon and Asha's claims, is Euron. Theon knows that Euron is cunning and ruthless. He shifts in his seat uncomfortably, revealing that Euron hasn't been seen in the Iron Islands for 2 years. He adds that Euron may be dead, though he sounds uncertain. Theon acknowledges that Euron's ship, the Silence, with its black sails and blood-red hull, is feared in every port, especially around the area of Asshai. That is really important to understand, that Euron has still been sighted, and that Euron is a massive threat if he was to return. Asha agrees with Theon about Euron's uncertain fate, but reassures him that even if Euron lives, he has spent far too much time away. He is half a stranger, and the Ironborn would never seat a stranger in the Seastone chair. And this is going to hit a nerve for Theon, because Euron's only been away for a little bit of time now, whereas Theon has been away most of his life. It's Asha gently jabbing at Theon that not only can Euron never sit the throne, but neither can Theon. And that's a really nice, way of putting it if you're George, right? That Asha isn't directly insulting Theon, but she is, through kind of what Theon's talking about. And this makes Theon kind of uneasy, because he too could be seen as a stranger. He reassures himself that he has time to prove his place. Even Theon realizes his weakness. But he thinks that he has time, and he thinks there's still a chance to prove himself. He considers trying to grope Asha again, but decides against it, realizing his mood had cooled. All of the sexual tension is gone, because Theon is thinking about, for one, his family, and two, he's thinking about, being displaced and all these things that he's very anxious and worried about. He decides to wait until they reach the castle. Theon tells Asha he will arrange for her to have an honored seat at the feast, and that he must sit at his father's right hand, but will join her later. And that's something that Asha will also remember. He notes that Balon doesn't linger long at feasts because he no longer has the stomach for drink. And I think one thing is, Balon's getting older, but also Balon's trying to plan a war. Asha responds wryly, saying that it is a sad thing when a great man grows old. You see the differences between Asha and Theon. Asha does still respect her father, but Theon does not. Theon arrogantly corrects her, saying that Balon is merely the father of a great man, meaning himself. That is a wildly arrogant thing to say. But I will say this. At least he acknowledges his father's not a great man. Balon is a horrible guy, a terrible father, a terrible lord. He is an idiot. I mean, Balon, again, I've made top 10 worst characters in terms of idiocy, I think, before. And Balon's right there at the top. Like, he is one of the biggest idiots of the entire series. Asha then teases him about being modest, but Theon brushes it off, saying only a fool humbles himself when the world is full of people eager to do it for him. He kisses the back of her neck, but Asha pushes his face away and asks what she would wear to the feast. It just keeps getting worse. Theon says he will ask Helya, the housekeeper, to dress her in one of his mother's gowns. He reveals that Lady Greyjoy is on Harlaw and not expected to return. What's even more wild is Theon hasn't gone to see his mother. You would think that'd be really important to him, especially when you have downtime between all these ships rallying to Balon. He hasn't even seen her. And it gets even more interesting because Asha brings this up. She suggests visiting his mother, saying your coming might bring her peace before she dies. But Theon disregards this. He's been too busy and saying his father needs him. These are obvious excuses. Theon is not busy at all. Here he is trying to get in some random woman's pants. Like, he had all the time in the world, but he's placing, his own needs and his own selfishness against seeing his mother, the woman that gave birth to him, someone he hasn't seen in a long time. Asha presses him, and Theon complains that she sounds like a woman, and she playfully admits that she is one and new with child. Theon is strangely excited by this and tells her he will only believe it when he sees her breasts fully grown and tastes her milk. Let's just keep going. We're almost over the whole facade. Asha jokingly asks what her husband, his father's sworn man, will say. Theon arrogantly responds that they will give him so many ships to build that he won't notice she's missing. Asha laughs, calling Theon a cruel lordling, and very interestingly enough, doesn't call him a princeling. And Theon doesn't necessarily even pick that up. She then distracts him with flattery, promising that if he shares more about the war, she might let him see her suckle her child one day. She asks about Robb Stark, the Wolf King Theon served, and the Lannisters he fights. She's just trying to figure out more information about the war, things going on, what to expect from their enemies. As we get into page 293, Theon eagerly shares tales of Winterfell and the war with Asha, enjoying her company and her quick wit. He feels at ease with her, thinking she's someone he's known for years. Well, you actually have Theon, but it was, I guess, a different person because Asha was a child back then. And he imagined keeping her if she's as skilled in bed as she is in conversation. He briefly thinks of Sigrun the shipwright, a thick-bodied man he finds unappealing, and mentally dismisses him as a waste. Pike's curtain walls loom ahead, and Theon rides through the open gates, helping Asha dismount. The hounds rush towards them and causing chaos. Theon tried to shoo them away, but Asha is laughing, enjoying the dog's attention. Now, the final straw should be here. The dogs are very keen and know Asha already. Why is that? A stableman runs up, and Theon orders him to take the horse and remove the dogs. However, the man ignores him and grins at this woman known as Eskrin, who we note as Lady Asha, and this is when she is finally revealed. This has got to be a really, really big moment here. The first time you see your sister and you've been played for a fool. How much Theon has told to her about their family, his issues and things that he is struggling with, and trying to seduce his own sister. He is too stunned, unable to believe it. Asha, his sister, now a grown woman. Asha, who had sailed from Great White and spent the night at an inn, teases Theon about her appearance. She explains that while she kept the vulture's beak, the pimples went away when her breasts came in. Theon, still shocked, asks, "Why didn't you tell me?" Asha explains that she wanted to see who Theon had become before revealing herself, giving him a mocking bow and teasing him about her chainmail gown for the feast. Asha wanted to get to know Theon, and I think her methods are a little wild, basically trying to seduce your brother, but it was the easiest way to get information from Theon. She walks away, giving him that familiar swaying stride, leaving Theon too stunned to speak. When he turns to Wex, the boy is smirking, which earns him a slap from Theon. Theon scolds Wex for enjoying his discomfort and not warning him about Asha's transformation, telling him to grow a tongue in the future, which is crazy, given Wex literally was trying to, he made all the signs to warn Theon, and Theon disregarded him as he does pretty much everybody else that's beneath him. That gets us to page 294. Theon's chambers feel unusually cold despite the brazier burning. He reflects on the awkwardness of his earlier encounter with Asha. He feels both outraged and embarrassed by their interaction. Think about the things that Theon's been saying to his sister, his actions. It's like, take a bad interaction with maybe a crush you had in the past, something that you can think of that you are really embarrassed by, and then amplify it by 10, and that's where you're at with Theon right now. He recalls how Asha had been bold, making him feel like a fool. Angry at her, he curses her, feeling resentment as he drinks wine and watches the sea turn darker. He feels out of place, frustrated by his lack of a true belonging at Pike, and curses Asha for complicating things. Let's go through a number of things, right? Theon already now believes and realizes that any attention that he was being given or respect was actually to Asha. He was played by a fool by his sister, and he already feels like he doesn't have a place here. People already treat Asha with respect and things like that, and she's a woman. Theon has been taught his whole life that women aren't supposed to really be respected. There's a lot of things playing on Theon's mind that he has to think about. And Theon right now is not a good man. He's not a good person, but that's what he's going through. And it's what he's trying to rationalize through. When it's time for the feast, Theon learns his lesson from his first chapter. He dresses in simple black and gray clothes, emphasizing his somber mood. He briefly reflects on his bad luck, joking that even when he kills a wildling, there's nothing worth taking. Because the way the Ironborn do it is, you kill someone, you gain their ornaments for killing them. You take their stuff, their jewels, whatever. Theon's only real kill is a wildling who had nothing on them. And we shouldn't even really say wildling because it was a deserter, but still. The feast hall is crowded, filled with Theon's fathers, lords, and captains, about 400 people in total. The room is lively with music, dancing, and drinking. The finger dance is performed by 3 burly men where they toss axes back and forth, the goal being either to catch them or dodge them without injury. It reflects the Greyjoys and the Ironborn. They are stupid and take a lot of big risks and things like that. Theon observes but is mostly ignored by the revelers. Lord Balon occupies the sea stone chair, which is carved in the shape of a kraken. Theon's uncles sit to his left, but Asha sits in the place of honor, where Theon had planned to sit on his right side. Lord Balon notices Theon's lateness, and Theon apologizes. Theon sits beside Asha, leaning close and whispering angrily in her ear, claiming she's taken his seat. That's how Theon feels just in general. Asha is claiming everything that Theon believes is his. Being the heir, the true heir, the one that everyone respects, and all the things that Theon believes that he should be getting, but it isn't. There's a lot of parallels here to what you think about Jon, how Jon maybe feels about the Starks, and how, he wishes he was one of them. Theon is kind of now in that same position. He just does not handle it as well as someone like Jon does. I will say there's also some lore here about the Seastone Chair and how it was already there in the Iron Islands before their people even came there. It is a very interesting idea. I might make a video on it in the future. If you guys want me to make a video on the Seastone Chair, let me know down in the comments. It won't be on this channel. It'll be on my main channel, but let me know what you guys think on the Seastone Chair. So getting into page 295, Asha responds to Theon's anger with mocking innocence, claiming he is mistaken about his place and teasing him about his fancy clothes. Asha's pouring salt in the wound if you're kind of Theon at this point. She's already played you for a fool, and now she's trying to do it publicly, and you can understand why. Theon's coming in as this arrogant, prince trying to take her place, what she believes that she's earned, and being Balon's true actual heir. She challenges him about the taste for luxury, insinuating his desire for silk and velvet. And even though this might be a bit harsh from Asha making fun of Theon and the way that he has kind of been brought up, it is the truth, right? Theon is somebody that really wants more of what the southern ambitions are, or what Westeros as a whole wants, is power, greed, things like that, and the traditional way of buying those things instead of how the Ironborn goes about doing it. Theon retaliates with a sharp jab, mentioning Asha's hauberk rusting and suggesting he liked to see her in iron, alluding to a bit more of a practical role. Asha continues to needle him, laughing off his comment and hitting at a rivalry between their ships, mentioning hers as being the Black Wind in contrast to his sea bitch, which Asha basically names Theon's ship, which is kind of hilarious, and it also has a not the best name. She makes another cutting remark, asking if he prefers wine or his mother's milk. Theon is flustered and responds quickly with a request for wine. Asha orders ale, dismissing him with a grin. Now, here's another thing that I think is interesting because, we did have Theon with the whole milk situation with Asha earlier, so she's poking fun at that, of course. But you also think about the difference here, the way we look at wine and ale. Wine is seen more as, I would say, a womanly drink at this point compared to like ale. Ale is more like a manly drink, you would assume. So it's almost like you have that role switching, which is insanely interesting because Asha is very unique in terms of women in the society. And you think about what Asha's trying to be. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like what Cersei's trying to do, but the two go about it very differently. In terms of Asha almost wanting to be a man or how men are treated. And so I think that's interesting. That really comes up a lot more in A Feast for Crows. It's a main central theme of that book. But I think it's interesting the way George kind of foreshadows it here. Theon continues eating the unappetizing food while being consumed by his frustration. He tries to distract himself by hollowing out bread and ordering a fish stew, but the meal makes him feel ill. Even Theon himself is not used to the type of food the Ironborn are eating, and this is what I think is the most interesting. If you think about this is the most, noble people that the Ironborn have to offer. All their high lords, Balon himself, and they're getting food that's not even that great. Like, it shows you how poor the Ironborn truly are in terms of food quality. Like, even, we go back to Catelyn and she's talking about the rich food of the South. Even their normal food, right? Things that she doesn't expect are really rich. They have way better food than the Ironborn. And that's something that Theon's grown up his whole life eating, whether that be at Winterfell or now, or even now on the road going south, their food is better than the Ironborn. The Ironborn, this is a lot of the reason I think that they go to reaving and things like that, because they can't grow their own food and they refuse to trade. It's a lot of their pride and desperation lead them to having to invade other nations. He confronts Asha about her supposed marriage to Sigrun, asking if their father knows, only to find out she lied about it. Obviously, Asha is not going to get married to some guy that's kind of not of her equal status, and Balon would never really allow that. So Theon, again, is a little slow. It's like, obviously, she's lying to you the whole time. Asha turns this into, once again, another jab at Theon, reminding Theon of a past remark where she had claimed to enjoy being on top, further embarrassing him even further. She reveals more shocking news, jumping to her feet and calling for a finger dancer to throw an axe. While she catches it in the air, Theon himself seems to lose a bit of composure, thinking that Asha meant to almost kill him. But in reality, all it does is it splits Theon's bread in half. Theon is losing composure at this point. He's being publicly humiliated by Asha. And it only continues here. As a dramatic reveal, she draws a dirk from between her breasts, mocking Theon's discomfort and further undermining him. Basically saying, okay, she's married to her axe and her child is her dirk. So it's one of those things where it's like Theon himself has no respect from anyone in this hall. They view him as an outsider. And here's Asha, the sister of Theon, publicly mocking him as well. And I think one thing I look at with Theon is, yes, he is this person that's very arrogant, views himself as above everyone else. It's a lot of things like this with Asha and Balon and him being pushed away by his family members because of things that were out of his control, I might add, that I think make Theon such an interesting character. Because who would expect, coming back, seeing your family for the first time, and this is the way your sister's treating you, it is quite interesting. And it's hard because Theon is so unlikable in this first book that I think that on a first read especially, I think that a lot of people would be enjoying this, like reading Theon just getting absolutely embarrassed and toasted more or less. But on a reread and knowing what's going to happen to Theon, it's very tragic to see the way that everything shapes up. The reason Theon does the actions he does is largely because of this lack of respect and things like that. And to Theon's horror, the great hall erupts with laughter, and they're all laughing at him as he realizes. Even further, his father and his uncles are also laughing at him. His response is a strained grin, plotting a future revenge. Asha continues, throwing her axe back to the dancers, earning more cheers and whispers. Asha is the favorite of the heirs. But does that mean that Asha is the person that will become the next king or queen afterwards from Balon? No. We see that even though Asha has the support of so many people here, that still doesn't mean that Asha will inherit the throne, something that Asha believes that she should get upon Balon's death. She is one of them, but because she's a woman, she's not fully one of them. One of the biggest issues, again, of A Feast for Crows. Asha criticizes Theon for not knowing Sigrun and not understanding the Iron Islands, to which she is completely correct. She points out that Theon's ignorance of the islands and their laws will make it difficult for him to command respect, implying that he doesn't deserve to be a prince. Now, what I do find is interesting is Asha does this whole public display, kind of asserting her dominance over him, but then she also does kind of try to help Theon. Even though it's a really harsh truth, it is the truth. It's something Theon needs to accept. That, again, he has no respect here. He's going to have to earn that. He can't just waltz in expecting it. Theon defends his claim, stating he is the lawful prince, but Asha sharply retorts, his title may hold in the Greenlands, but the Ironborn make their own laws. That's the whole point of it. I mean, think about what the Ironborn are doing right now. They're about to rebel against the Greenlands. Why would you follow then or expect that law to follow? The Ironborn are very different now. They do still follow that men should inherit. So Asha, I also think, at the same point, is overlooking the Ironborn laws and their society as a whole. Theon's frustration grows as he reflects on his return home and the way he has been treated. The memories of his childhood captivity and the changes he encounters in Pike make him feel alienated from his own people. Again, if we go back to Theon, and this is a main focus of Theon 1, and I try to bring up as much as possible in A Game of Thrones when I did my reread there, but Theon is a person that, on one hand, his family basically had to give him up, and he went to the Starks. Now, he did find a family of sorts, right? He views Ned Stark, I would say, as a father, even though he doesn't admit it now. He also found a real brother in Robb. But at the same time, he was a captive the whole time. He was a prisoner. He could not go freely. He had the executioner's block kind of hanging over his head. And now he finally gets his freedom. He finally goes back to the family that basically abandoned him. I mean, they couldn't really do much about it, but still, that's how I would feel if I was Theon. And they treat you with scorn. They treat you like, oh, why did you even bother coming back? It's what makes Theon's character so compelling to me. Even though this isn't one of my favorite chapters, I think this is probably one of Theon's weakest chapters, if not the weakest of the entire series. There's still so many layers to Theon's character that make him so interesting. Theon continues, noting that the feast is underwhelming with poor food choices like fish stews, black bread, and spiceless goats. But Theon finds solace in a simple onion pie. As the evening progresses, the alcohol keeps flowing. Really, the only thing that Theon's enjoying is the alcohol. Lord Balon Greyjoy, or as we should say, King Balon Greyjoy, leaves the table with his brothers to make plans, ordering his companions to follow him to his solar. Theon, eager to follow, to, again, get in the good graces of his father, to be a dutiful son, is interrupted by Asha, who Asha taunts Theon further. Because on one vein, it's good because you're showing your father respect, you're trying to be a good son, but in the other vein, again, the Ironborn culture is one all about strength, and you're showing yourself as kind of, oh, you'll just follow him around and things like that, which is what Asha's going to do. Asha mocks Theon for being in a rush to follow their father, suggesting that it would not hurt Lord Balon to wait a little longer. She sarcastically remarks on the ease of catching up with their uncle Aeron, who is drunk, and Victarion, who is dim-witted, again going back to what Theon said about their uncles. Theon, feeling his pride stung, retorts sharply, saying he runs after no man. You see the game that Theon's in right now. He cannot win, right? The game is fixed against him here on the Iron Islands. He doesn't understand how to play this game that Asha has kind of perfected to this point. Asha fires back, suggesting Theon has no trouble running after women, though, and then reminds him of their previous interaction. And let's update the counter. Asha has now squeezed Theon's cock 3 times because she does it here. Theon just basically jumps out of his seat almost as he's completely embarrassed. You never would expect your sister to do that. That's all I'm going to say. His cheek flushing, he attempts to justify his behavior, claiming he is a man with natural hungers, for sarcastically calling her an unnatural creature. And so, at this point, I mean, I think Theon is he's underselling it a little bit. I think Theon has more than a man's hunger as he's always horny, but Asha continues as she retorts back his line that maybe she could steer him back into port. Yes, the awkward feeling returns for only a moment, but it's still awkward. As we get to page 297, Theon reflects on Asha's behavior, deciding the marriage isn't for her. He sarcastically suggests she would be better off with the Silent Sisters, an order of religious women, before leaving the table to find their father. As he crosses the bridge to the sea tower, the rain and his drunken state make the journey difficult. He's drank too much, plainly. He should have been a little bit more sobered up, especially going to a war council about the fate of the Iron Islands, but he clenches the rope as if imagining he's gripping Asha's neck, as he's still frustrated by his sister. Inside the Solar, Lord Balon is in his usual seal-skin robe, sitting by a brazier with Victarion and his brothers. Victarion is discussing the winds and tides, but Balon silences him and turns to Theon, signaling it's time to finally get the reveal of what Balon's plan is. And boy, is it a doozy. Lord Balon reveals that Dagmar Cleftjaw is bringing allies from Old Wyke, including the Drums and the Stonehouses, and they plan to sail as soon as they arrive. Balon expects Theon to take charge of the first raid and gives him 8 longships for the task. If you're Theon, you are, in your mind, the last son Balon has. You are the heir to his seat from what you believe. And you get 8 longships. We talk about the naval superiority that the Iron Islands have, especially over the western coast. 8 longships is not much at all. That's nothing, right, for the Iron Islands. It's the just blatant disrespect that Theon is probably feeling, but at the same time, if you are Balon, Theon's never, been the captain of his own ship. You don't know how much you can trust Theon, especially since you're attacking the north. I understand both sides, but again, I think that Balon is just a little harsh on his son. Theon protests, feeling that 8 ships are too few to accomplish anything meaningful, which he's correct. 8 longships can't do anything, especially when you consider that's not a lot of men either. He is supposed to harry the stony shore, raiding villages and sinking ships to provoke the northern lords. Aeron and Dagmar will accompany him, which is another thing, right? You understand, if you're Theon, this is people that are supposed to overlook Theon to make sure that he stays in line, and is almost like his guardians, right? It's people to overlook him. And I actually think this is a smart move by Balon. I don't give Balon credit much, but I do agree here, like, Theon is so young, and he hasn't been doing this for that often. Giving him people that can help keep him in line and also actually give him advice is a good thing. Now, the problem here is going to be Theon's job is so inconsequential to anything for someone like Theon who's trying to gain respect. He's trying to, raise up his status. He can't do that, taking, some villages where there's not going to be people even fighting back. And that's really Theon's biggest issue with this problem. And I think that's the issue you have with Balon as well. If Balon truly cared about Theon and wanted him to, become the man that Balon always wanted him to be, this is not what you would do. This is not the way you would set up Theon, right? And so that part of it, I think, is wrong. Asha enters quietly and listens as Lord Balon turns to her. She is given command of 30 longships with orders to strike Deepwood Motte, a northern castle held by the Glovers. Balon expects her to take the castle quickly and easily, considering the Glovers' weakened position. Now, again, we know that Deepwood Motte will fall, but what do you gain from taking Deepwood Motte? And the idea is, okay, you have a base deep within the north, but at the same time, it offers no value to you at all. Like, it's irrelevant. It's just something you can take to take. And so that's the issue that the Ironborn have. You're just pissing people off to piss them off, and it's not gaining you any value. Now, the one part of this plan that is somewhat smart, albeit you still won't be able to hold it, and it's still dumb because you can't take over the north. But that is kind of the final part of it, which we'll kind of talk about here in a second with Victarion. Asha responds with a smile and a comment about always wanting a castle, which she will now take. Now, I think just the issue here is if you're Theon, you're watching your sister get literally triple the size amount of ships you're getting. You're getting 8, she's getting 30. It just feels, if you're Theon, that Asha has basically disinherited everything that he's always, dreamed he was going to have. And it just makes for the situation where Theon is going to be bitter trying to prove himself, and will make some very rash decisions. But I think if you're also Theon, you're realizing how stupid this plan is. And I think that's something that probably would be going through Theon's mind. If Theon can realize your plan's stupid, probably need a new plan. Theon continues to struggle with his frustration, knowing that he should have been the one chosen for such an important task. He has experience with Deepwood Motte, having visited with Ned Stark in the past, and feels that he deserves the chance to prove himself by taking the castle. He silently resents Asha's rise in his father's place. And Theon is quite right. You would think Theon, somebody that has more knowledge of the North than anyone else here, at the very least, would help Asha take Deepwood Motte. But no. And I actually think that if you wanted to give Theon a chance to actually gain some respect and honor, have him alongside of Asha go take Deepwood Motte. That makes more sense than just having Theon doing basically nothing. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot here that Balon, he's just disrespecting his son, basically publicly. Yeah, it's just, I feel bad for Theon, but you also can understand maybe why Theon gets this mission and all this stuff. Like, you can understand the rationale, albeit I don't think it's handled well at all. As we get into page 298, Lord Balon tells really the meat of his plan. He assigns the main thrust of their plans to Victarion, who will lead the charge. Theon is not going to be given a pivotal role, and their father's plan is to target Moat Cailin, which holds strategic importance as the key to the Neck. Once they control it, Robb Stark will be trapped, and the Ironborn will hold all of the land they conquer. So, here's the issue. This is not like you're playing a board game like Risk. It's like the idea of, oh, well, you conquer the territory that leads into a continent on Risk, and that means you have the whole continent. No. You're basically, yes, cutting off Robb Stark from dealing with you right away, but once the North gets enough men to throw you out of the North, which they will be able to at one point, right? What is the plan? You are a terrible on-land military going against the largest landmass continent in Westeros. This plan is so stupid. It's insane. All it's doing is it's screwing over Robb's campaign without the Greyjoys gaining anything. The Greyjoys get nothing out of this, right? Like, think about by the end of the time where all the Greyjoy forces are out of Westeros, right? In terms of Deepwood Motte falling, Moat Cailin falling back to the Boltons, they gain nothing. They literally died more than they gained anything. Victarion gets a little bit of spoils that he kind of brings back during the Kingsmoot. That's it. And that's what Asha explains at her Kingsmoot, or at the Kingsmoot, I should say, not hers, but that's what she explains to them, right? It just is a dumb plan, and I really want to make sure you guys know Balon is just a moron. Theon protests, voicing his concerns about the lords left behind in their castles, but Lord Balon brushes him off, explaining that the northern lords have gone south to fight with Robb Stark, and those that are left behind will either submit or die. Winterfell might resist, but they will eventually fall, and the Ironborn will make the people their thralls and saltwives. This sounds like a dream. How do the Greyjoys plan to siege Winterfell? How do they plan to siege the Dreadfort? How do they plan to siege the Last Hearth? They're going to be how far away from the sea with no ability to resupply? They have not enough men to even somewhat control the North. This plan is just insane. And Theon even understands. Theon is right here. Theon is right to understand that, yes, this isn't going to work. But at the same time, you're Theon. You can't say that. Like, you can't straight up say, yeah, this isn't going to work, because then he's going to lose more respect. People are going to think he's a coward. He has to follow his father's orders. It's him having any attempt to try and become an actual part of this family that's extremely dysfunctional. After the meeting, Theon steps outside into the rain and crosses the rope bridge, reflecting on the heavy responsibility ahead and feeling out of place in his family's ambitions. Theon is not basically even having a role in this war, and he understands that. The rain intensifies as Theon struggles across the slippery bridge. He stumbles and falls to his knees, but Asha helps him up, teasing him about his inability to hold his wine. In a moment of frustration and bitterness, Theon says he preferred Asha when she was like Eskrid, someone more innocent in his eyes. Asha responds by laughing, claiming she liked him better when he was a child of 9. this is a great moment because when you think about A Dance with Dragons, this line's going to get called back to, right? When Theon is now the one with a very different appearance and Asha doesn't recognize him. A really nice way to end the chapter. It's kind of that almost that foreshadowing to what we'll see later on as the roles kind of reverse. But the one thing that happens with this chapter, that's the major part, is we finally get the actual way that the Greyjoys are going to attack the North. Anybody that has 2 functioning brain cells can see this is a terrible plan. It is going to be another reason why Robb Stark will lose the war, but it's something that you cannot predict if you're Robb. You cannot predict that the Greyjoys are going to try and attack you because you understand how, you're a rational person. You think that is absolutely stupid, right? So yeah, I think the issue kind of just comes with that idea. I think it's a solid chapter. Don't get me wrong. I love the parts of this chapter that focus on Theon specifically as a character, and even the Greyjoy ambitions and learning more about their culture, the Iron Islands, their poorer state. I like a lot of what we're going to actually end up seeing in A Feast for Crows with this chapter. But the thing I don't really like about this chapter much at all is Asha and Theon's very awkward first meeting, and I just feel like it goes on for too long. This is a chapter to me that I think is longer than it probably should be. Again, I think this chapter and the last chapter share a lot of similarities in terms of, I think the length is a bit too long. Now, I do think that in this chapter, there's more substance to this chapter than there was the last chapter. This chapter has more that's, I think, vital to the story. I just wish George had done Asha's initiation of the story a bit differently. It just comes off to me as very awkward and kind of repulsive to read. But that's just how George writes. He writes, I don't know, about sex and things that just I don't feel like is needed. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys all in the next reread. Bye, guys.